Awesome. Hey, Nika, how are you doing?
Hey, Shreya, it is time. We're going to have some fun. We were talking last week about Slack integrations because we were thinking a little bit about Courier, and we wanted to think about Courier and Slack. So I guess let's take one each of those, right? How about you go? Now I'm going to point in the right direction, folks, because even though my video is mirrored, I perfectly know that I can point over to Shreya by pointing this way. I no, oh, so close.
We'll cut that out.
Shreya, how about you take this one? What's Courier?
So that's a great question, Nika. Courier is a notifications infrastructure, which is basically an API, a very simple API that allows you to build any type of notification system that you want to. So if you're simply just trying to build a platform or an application and you want to make sure that that application is able to send out emails, SMS messages, push notifications, or direct messages through apps
Mm-hmm.
like Slack or Discord, it can be an insane amount and time of work and like take a lot of resources to build something like that from scratch. It
Yeah.
takes a lot of engineering time, especially if you're paying all of those engineers. Like it can be a hassle. So using something like Courier allows you to literally just do all of that work within the matter of minutes. Set up an entire notification system, have conditions that help you decide what channel you're sending which notifications to. You can
Mm-hmm.
have user preferences there. You can build automation so that you're not like sending out individual notifications, but instead scheduling or batch sending notifications. So there's a lot of things that you can do. And we'll actually get a chance to jump into it
Yeah,
a little
we'll
bit.
see some of that shortly. Usually when I get put on the spot about it, I'm like, well, you know how we all love things like Twilio and Mailgun to send certain kinds of messages. You always find out you end up having to stand up a service on your own to like manage that, right? Because you can't just send 1,000 messages all at once. You have to negotiate these things. Courier helps you stay away from that dependency, right? To just say, hey, I'll just submit some API calls from inside my app, and then Courier will handle the sort of art of like checking a few conditions, sending them to the right people, doing things like falling back to another channel. And that gets us to Slack, right? Slack is often one of the first ways that your code is going to communicate with your users, especially if you're doing some kind of B2B service or some other kind of SaaS project.
Yeah, exactly. And a cool thing that I don't think I've talked about too much before, but we recently came out with an API v2, which
Huh?
makes it a lot easier, like a version 2 of our API, to send out these messages. So now you can literally send any type of message or all types of messages in like 10 lines, I think. It's super easy, super quick to do. You just set up your application, add in 10 lines of code. All of the code is also provided to you via Courier. So it's just copy, paste, and you're ready to go.
Yeah, you can grab something like an SDK to negotiate with the API or whatever you want, and you can say, "Hey, I want to send to these people. I want to send an email to these other people. I want to send an SMS." And it's just like parameters on that call. It feels very very clean, and like you don't have to become a notifications expert to be able to send notifications from your code.
Exactly, exactly. So what's the plan for today? What are we
I
gonna do?
thought that we would just try to send a few messages in to Slack, right? So, like, let's think of like the simplest example where we know something about our user. Like, I think with Slack, we want to know an email address. We'll find that out, right, as we look at the API, and we want to send messages to a certain user, right, from our code. So yeah, I think that's our target, right? I think that's pretty well docked. So we'll go through the docs and we'll see how to do it.
Yep, it sounds fun. And actually, this is going to be one of my first times using Slack properly as an integration. So
Mm-hmm.
hopefully everything works out. This is going to be exciting for me too.
Yeah, for a
Um,
lot of people, I think email is like the first way that they use Courier, since it's like,
yeah.
oh, you can just do it through Gmail. It's super simple, but it's equally simple and free to like set up a Slack workspace and send a few messages to that. Do we want to turn on screen share? I have the add to stream button, but I want to check in with you.
Yeah, let's
All
go
right,
for it.
we're adding to stream. Okay, that's
Awesome.
Courier developer infrastructure for product notifications. You got it right in one, so we know we have that right. Let's take a look at that doc that we were targeting.
Awesome. Actually, before we
Mm.
get into the docs, is
Well,
it
right. Let's see where
okay
we're
if
going.
I
Let's see our target.
Yeah. Is it okay if I go through the actual Courier app really quickly and like
Yeah.
show the onboarding process? In that case, we actually will be able to see how the API works with emails because that's the quickest way to go through the onboarding process. So
Right. Yeah. So, it's great to describe, oh, here's what Courier does. I think one of the things about a tool that says, hey, this cuts out this piece of work for you is that you kind of want to know that it's actually easy, right? So let's see it work. Can we get like 2 steps of zoom and enhance here because
That's a
our
great
writing
point.
is a bit tiny.
Does that work?
I'm watching this in like 420. Give me like one more.
One more?
Oh, okay. If anything gets over zoomed, we'll see. But this looks so good on our view. So
I love it. Awesome. Yeah, I'm using my monitor too, which also shrinks things a lot.
yeah.
But once you're signing up for Courier, all you have to do is put in your email, authenticate your email, and then you're good to go. In my case, I already have an account, so I just created a new workspace, but the rest of the process should be the same for both of us.
Mhm.
Courier's onboarding process is very quick. You simply just choose which channel you want to send a message with. So we're going to go with email because it's recommended, and it honestly is the easiest path.
Yeah.
Um,
When I tried SMS right at the start, it's like, okay, well, who's your SMS provider? I'm like, oh, right. I'll sign up for a Twilio account in a minute. Let's go back and just do email, right?
Exactly. And I kind of went too quickly in the last step, but I chose Node.js as my coding stack because that's what I prefer using, but you can literally use anything that you prefer. And then it recommends Gmail for email because it's a one-click integration. You don't need to worry about getting any API keys. It just authenticates via your own email address. So
Mhm.
I will use my Courier email.
And yeah, so down in that show other providers, right, is Mailgun and all the other sort of, hey, you want to send 10,000 messages, right? There's these other providers are available to you, but yeah, when we're gonna send our first few, obviously Gmail's gonna work just great.
Exactly. I'm going to use curl. That is the quickest way to send a message with a Mac. If you're using a Windows or anything else, you can choose PowerShell or use this drop down to pick a specific one.
Mhm.
Going to copy this command. It already has my authorization token added to it. And let me pull up my terminal, which is going to be tiny. So I'll zoom into that a little bit.
CSI Miami theme plays as we zoom in and enhance.
Does that look good?
Give me like 2 more steps.
Yeah.
There we go. That's
Awesome.
pretty good. That's pretty good. I got this thing like tiny to imagine that some people are watching us on a Nokia 2600, but I think we're good. I think we're good.
How did you know? Okay, I'm going to paste the code that we just copied so you can see that it's a post request. It has the URL to the API, has your bearer token. It has my email directly copied because we set it up with Gmail. You can choose to change this email if you want to change your user. This entire message is actually built with API v2. So you can kind of start seeing the structure of this API, but we'll get into that a little bit more later. The content of the email, so the title is the same as the subject, and the body is the same as the actual email itself.
Yeah,
It's
we even can pass in some variables and data objects here, right?
Exactly. Yeah. So we have a joke variable and then we have a data object which stores that joke, and you can have various variables stored in there. And I'm just going to go ahead and click enter.
Nice.
When you receive this request ID, that is basically like a great mental note to say this message succeeded. The API call went through. There still could be some issues with the message, so we'll go into that in a second. But
yeah, I remember we saw in another stream an example where it's like Twilio got that I wanted to send an SMS message, but because it was some like fake little number that I'd set up for that purpose, Twilio came back and said, hey, this isn't valid. I'm not going to deliver it to this address because you just have a demo account. But that was actually stored. We had that in the logs in the Courier interface. So it was pretty easy to diagnose. We got back a request ID because it's like, yes, we requested it from Twilio, but here's the error message we got back. We could see that in the Courier interface. Yeah, exactly. We sent our first notification. Look at this party pigeon.
We got a dancing pigeon. And you can click on Explore Logs, which you can also access in your dashboard over here on the side. And we can see that we sent an email 51 seconds ago. And this is how it was rendered, and more information about the fact that it was sent successfully. And if there were an error, then it would tell you over here what the error was, and you could kind of figure out how to solve it there.
I'm sure, Shrey, you heard my stream catchphrase, which is, the first time I'm running code is like, hey, wouldn't it be crazy if that just worked? And, we've all been there where we're like trying to send via an API. We're just not sure quite what's getting actually rendered or sent at the output. And so this is just so nice to be able to see, hey, here's the data object that we generated. And also here's what we rendered for that. Like, here's what it should be looking like.
Exactly. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and go back to the Courier website, and we're going to go into our documentation now. So Nika, you spoke a little bit earlier about how we're using a Slack integration.
Yeah.
And so I'm going to actually try to find it. I believe it's in channels. And once you go into channels, you can select the type of channel that you want to send it to. So Slack counts as a chat.
And we might,
Um,
folks, for those who want to hear the inside baseball here, we might be changing that top thing to Slack, just to make it easier to find in the near future. But chat for right now.
Oh, we're going to change this to Slack?
I think we had talked about doing that last week. So it might
Gotcha.
be that if you're following this video step
Yeah.
by step and you feel like they lied to me, no,
They
it
lied.
changed since, folks. We would
Yeah.
never do that to you.
Yes, we do always take a lot of good feedback from our community and try to implement that in our documentation. Worst case, if you're struggling to find a page, you can just search it in here and it'll take you to
Yeah, like
the
Slack
actual
will get you
doc.
right there. Yeah.
Exactly. So I'm just going to follow what the documentation tells me to. And if I have any questions, we can try to Google things or talk to each other
Yeah.
as we go. Is this readable? Should I
Let's give us
zoom in a
maybe
little
one
bit
step
more?
again. I got this all tiny, so
Woo, I don't know what I
if you
did.
just had PRK, if you just had the lenses of your eyes replaced, and you're like, oh, I'm so glad that we got everything zoomed in, then there it is.
Awesome. So we're going to set up chat using Slack. And this is the step-by-step guide, which is perfect because I love step-by-step guides. And our prereqs are that we need a Courier account, and we just did that. So we're good to go. We need to sign up for Slack, and we need to create a Slack workspace. So I'm going to try to do all of this from scratch. I do have a Slack account, so I'll just sign in. If you don't have a Slack account, you can go ahead and create one. We're going to walk through every individual step.
Every little step. Yeah.
So let's go ahead.
And if you're watching this on YouTube, you'll see that there are little chapter markers down here. And so if you want to skip ahead past this Slack part, the next chapter will cover, hey, you've already got your workspace set up.
Exactly.
I would call this section, hold on, let's give it a moment of silence as respect for the banner. Building a Slack app.
Beautiful.
Okay, let's go on.
So if we go down here, you can either create a new workspace, or if you're already an admin in a different workspace where you want to integrate these Slack notifications, you can choose one of those. I have one that I built while I was testing out the Slack docs previously. So I'll show you what it looks like first, and then we can actually create a brand new workspace. And
give us, my catchphrase, give us a step of zoom here so that we can see this. But yeah, the idea is, right, is that we you get these direct messages from some kind of program or other piece of running code, and we want to be able to replicate this.
Exactly. So there's various ways in which we can send these applications, and basically you just give Slack different types of permissions, which we'll see later on. And based on those permissions, Slack will decide how it wants to send that message. So the first thing that we're going to do is actually have an app send us the message directly. So I think if you use like Hey Taco or something like that, you often get messages directly from those applications. So that's how that's happening. Or you can choose to send messages to private or public channels. So this is an example of what that would look like. So I'm gonna go ahead and create a new workspace. Nika, do you have any kind of other examples of what cases we might want to use Slack for?
Oh yeah, well, we're creating this workspace. I think, one of the things that I encourage people to always start with a Slack notification from is something, for example, that involves a machine learning detection. So we want to say, hey, I want to look for suspicious logins or things where I think the geo of a request is way off. And you might have a system that's emitting a lot of notifications about that. And that's the kind of thing where even email can get sort of painful pretty quickly, right? Where it's like, hey, maybe let's just go ahead and emit this to a Slack app, to begin with, right? A Slack channel where we can go and see, hey, what are all the notifications this thing has generated in the last week? Do we see some pattern about that? And so that's very often, that's why I say Slack is both easy to generate and often an early thing, because it takes a while to learn if you're building software as a service, when are you being too noisy? When are you meeting the needs that the person has? And so Slack is usually a relatively quiet way to get in touch.
Exactly. I will also actually add, this is something that I've only recently started considering, but I work for Bit Project, which is a student nonprofit focused on technical education. And I'm planning on actually using Courier to build a Slack app to communicate with our mentor community, because we have a growing community over there. And I think it'd be really cool where if we just like are able to automate messages every week or every month or something like that.
Yes.
So there's a lot that you can do with it for sure.
Yeah, there was a great thread on Hacker News the other week about like how very often notifications are actually the most basic interface of your software, right? Where yes, we want people to log on to our site and see our cool dashboard and everything, but just those notifications that we send to say, hey, you made 257 sales this week, and here's the, how profitable they were, what have you, that's often where people really connect with your application. So when you think about something like, what was a big one, Uber or Twitter or something, for some people, notifications are a big part of how they interact.
Yeah. I would be late to every Uber if I didn't get those like 2 or 3 reminders every
Okay.
time. Your
Tell
car's
me
waiting.
what is actually happening. Yeah.
Awesome. So we have our Slack set up. It asked a couple of questions, mostly related to how you're using the application and who you want. So I skipped the who you want steps because I don't want to add anyone just yet. But I did say this is going to be a Slack demo. I named it and now simply just created an app for me. And I'm going to go ahead and open that. So we have our Slack demo app, and this is very basic. It has some channels that it's created based off of how I personally want to use it. So all of this is Slack managed. I didn't do anything for this. Okay, let's figure out what our next step is. We already logged in. So the next step is create a Slack workspace, which we just did actually. So we're done with that too, huh? Great. Now we're going to go ahead and add a Slack integration.
Right. Okay.
So here it says that once you're logged into Courier, you want to navigate to the integrations page, click on the Slack integration and configure it. So you can actually open this link directly, but I want you to see that when you're in the Slack app, integrations is just over here on the left bottom screen, so you can access it.
And this is from the Courier site, right?
Yep,
app.courier.com.
Courier.
Got it.
Exactly. And then what we want to do is go ahead and scroll down to our chat.
Folks, if you take this on a VCR, pause now to see all the many kinds of channels that you can integrate or just set up a Courier account and scroll down. It's pretty neat. Obviously, things like AWS, SES, and a whole bunch of other channels are integratable there.
Exactly. And then we're going to go ahead and install provider. So a key point, normally you add an API key when you're integrating any other type of integration. But in this case, we don't need to do that just yet. We'll do that later. So we integrated it. I believe it's saved. I'm just going to click save once more for just in case. And then we did that. Courier required different pieces of information. For now, we're just going to click install. We did that. Our Slack app will be relatively simple. Perfect. I like simple apps. Slack allows for complex interactivity and menu interactions. If you're interested in learning more about what you can do with Slack, there's a link to just learning about Slack apps.
And this would be generally like you can deliver a more complex payload, right? And what's neat, we're going to set like particular permissions about what our app is allowed to do, where it's allowed to send messages.
Exactly. It says over here, if you already have a Slack app that you want to use, then you can directly skip to Oauth Permissions. I think for this case, we're going to create a Slack app.
We're going to do all those steps. We're going to make a true apple pie from scratch. Big Bang, creation of the universe, evolution of life on Earth, the Caucasus Mountains create apples. Eventually, someone invents a pie. That's what we're doing here. We're going to create our app.
Now I'm craving pie. What have you done?
So it's time to create our Slack app. Let's take a look.
Let's go for it. So once you're logged into Slack, you want to navigate to the apps page and create an app. Sounds simple.
You do want to give yourself some snacks while you create Slack apps. They're called Slack app snacks.
I love that. So I'm going to create a new application.
I was worried that this one, and by the way, let's give ourselves just a step of zoom. We really probably don't have to worry too much about this stuff. No worries.
You're gonna have to
there's always one interface, right? I was worried this was going to take a while because it was like making a Twitter, app or something where it's like there's an application process. But this makes sense that since you're just really speaking to a workspace that you just set up, there's really like no approval process. You'll just go ahead and create one.
Exactly. I think that based off of our previous conversation,
Snack app, yes.
Snack app. Yeah. So Slack demo is the workspace that I want to build this in. It'll give you options for every workspace that you're an admin in. And just create the application. Sweet. Got it. What's next?
Next, we want to give it some permission, right? We want to say, hey, you're allowed to, in our case, we're not going to, this is not going to be some, artificial intelligent thing that loves you. It's not going to be even we don't want it to read messages, right? We just want to give it a few little abilities to write out messages to people.
Exactly. So OAuth permissions, exactly what Nika just said. We want it to be able to write, and we want users to be able to read our messages that we send. So let's go ahead and figure out how to add our, is it in the token section? I should have been reading and I totally skipped over it. Navigate to the OAuth permissions page. In the scopes section of the page, add these scopes as bot token scopes. So scopes, token name. So I'm gonna
it's not under tokens. Is it?
Oh, is that not it?
No, right. I think we're generating tokens there.
Is it permissions? Oh, it's in permissions. Smart.
OAuth tokens, your scopes. There we go.
Yes, perfect.
Scopes.
So I'm going to add a scope. We have chat write. We have im.write.
Yeah, I don't know what in-write does, but users read, by the way, I don't think that's actually giving users the permission to read our messages, but more that we have the ability to say, hey, there is a user with this ID, or there is a user, and then what email do they have? So this will let us get back an error message if we try to descend to a user email that doesn't exist.
Yeah, that makes more sense.
I guess. Just my guess. I don't know what in-write does. Start direct messages with people. It says it right there when you set the bot token scope. So there we go. Now we both know.
So that's what we saw earlier, right? We had an example where the app itself was sending messages, and then we had an example where it was sending messages. Oh, I guess we didn't see the direct message. Or was that was the direct
I think we did. We saw example of the direct messages. Right now, we're not giving it the permission, I think, to message any channels, right? We just wanted to directly message people based on their email, which makes sense because it's very likely that we have the user's email when we're going to send a message, right? And that's also a nice application from where you're trying to message people in multiple ways using Courier. So you say, hey, I want to email them, failing that I want to Slack them, failing that I want to SMS them or something, right? This direct messaging is going to be the closest equivalent of that.
Exactly. Okay, so I confused myself for absolutely no reason because it's actually very clear here. But basically, chat write is saying it can send as Snack app, and then imwrite is saying it can send as Snack app to those people specifically. Awesome. Okay, next step is at the top of this page, there's a button that says install app to Workspace or reinstall app. So I think this is going to be install to Workspace. Since this is the first time that we're doing it, and I want to give it the permissions, yes. And it says success, which is great. I love seeing a little green button.
Success.
Yeah. You should see a bot user OAuth token make note of this value. Okay, so this is our main API key. So I'm just going to leave it here and scroll down, and when we need it, we can go back to that page and access it. Congratulations, you've configured your integration with Slack. Yeah. Now let's create a notification in Courier. So we're going to navigate to the notifications page. So that's in the designer.
The token that we just saw as we're switching over, this is only giving us the permissions that we just created. So relatively that is why we want to start with least permission as we need. In our case, since our app is probably just going to emit messages out to people, we're not going to even let it read chats, right? Which makes this token very, very safe. That's why you're seeing it on stream, right? Because the most it can do is send out messages to this demo workspace. So that feels very safe.
Exactly. So we don't have any notifications, so let's go ahead and create one. And this part should be relatively simple. So it's set up with email already, but I'm going to remove that channel and I'm going to use chat, and it automatically sets up Slack because we integrated that earlier. Publish changes, and I'm going to click on chat, And
I'll
what
just
should
note that
our
if you want to get really deep on how we compose these messages, like how we create these message templates, we do have separate videos on that, which I'll probably link for the show description. We're doing it here, and you'll see us do it step by step. But if you want to get into like, well, how do I add these vertical rules, or how do I do a bunch of really neat custom data formatting and such, conditional formatting, that is covered in some separate stuff, but that is available to you.
We got you. Awesome. Nika, what should our message be?
Our message should be hello, comma, is it me you're looking for? Question mark.
Is it me you're looking for? Okay. Do we want to use any like fancy variables in here?
Well, we'll say, you know, we need to sign off the message, so we'll say I love you, and then comma, and then we're gonna put in the user's name.
Okay. I'm sorry. I'm not a bad typer. I have my mic in front of my keyboard, which is why I'm
hey,
messing up all the time.
real. I was just talking about how I switched to the Ergo docs. It's a couple years ago now, and I was like, I typed not well for a long time, and when I say a long time, I mean like 8 months. Like, I was still like, I hope this message finds you well. Nope. Just delete it. Type it again. At the time, viewer, I was a professional writer. It was rough, but now I can put in spaces and backspaces with my thumb. So
thank God.
Who's the real idiot? And a quick pause because we'll probably edit this out too. All right, we've got our little thing. We got name put in as a data object in double curly braces. And yeah, I think we're ready to hit publish changes.
We are. I'm going to go ahead and publish changes. We'll go over to the preview. And over here, you can add test data, which will eventually turn into real data when we're sending an actual sending this call through an actual app. For now, let's go ahead and check out our test events. We're going to call this Nika because Nika is going to be our person. And the variable is going to be name. And the name is Nika. And we're going to save and close. I will say that the reason we called it name is because that's what the variable is over here. So just keep that in mind. And if it doesn't show up over here, then there's probably some sort of
and I think it might be telling us we only need like single curly braces, maybe.
Yeah, I just realized that. That's
folks. How is that not a moment of empathy? How many times have I asked myself in some templating language, was it single braces or double curly braces this time? Yeah. And then it turns out it's always one of them. If you start with doubles, then you usually just make your message look fancy. So that's
fancy. I like that. I'm gonna say that every time I mess up. I'm just trying to make it look fancy.
Just trying to be fancy here.
Awesome. So we have this. I'm gonna use curl first off, just to make sure that we can do it quickly, and then we'll set up a different application later. Let's make sure we're on the right path. So we went to the notifications page. We created a new notification. This actually tells you specifically what to put in that message, but you don't have to. You can send any type of notification you want to. Courier provides a visual template editor, so we just saw that. Kind of gives you a little bit more context.
Syntax, which makes sense. Sorry, I'm talking over you. Go ahead.
No, I wasn't saying anything. So yeah, it just kind of gives you more context into content blocks and like how to design the notification. For now, we'll add a text block. That's great. We don't need that right now. We already built our notification. And then once you're finished, publish changes. We did that. Send a message. Great. So Courier passes messages to integration via the send endpoint. For this tutorial, we will send our message with curl. That's where we're at right now. But you can use any library and language that you prefer. You can also test on Postman. Sounds good. If you need more information, the reference page is linked over there. You can also access the reference page over here on the left. Authorization is the next step. So we did see that little token in Slack, but we never actually put that token into Courier at any point. So that's what we're going to do next. Use the token authorization. We must send an authorization header with each request. And then it also requires an event. Okay. Click the gear icon next to the notification's name to reveal it. So I'm going to click the gear icon. You can see the notification ID. Everything is set up over here.
And I think we can give it an auth token. It can't possibly have the right authorization token already in that.
So this is the auth token. This is Courier's personal auth token.
This is the auth token that we're sending to Courier to say, hey, we really have a Courier account.
Exactly.
Gotcha.
And then what we're going to do, let's assign these values to an environment variable.
Oh,
In a
right.
bash terminal, you can do that, or we can skip over this stage, right?
Yeah. So again, folks, it is of course better policy to like not let not like store your stuff, your like auth tokens in a bash history if you can avoid it and stuff. Obviously, this is for demonstration purposes. When you're doing this yourself, like any other auth token, you want to have some kind of environment variable system set up to hold them. But we can be a little bit lazier here. We'll probably be deleting this Courier workspace right after this, so we're not too concerned about it. So we can safely sort of gloss over some of the security considerations here.
Yes. And I actually want to clarify, this entire section is explaining how you can build the API call from scratch. In our case, we're going to just take the code that it's already given. And when you copy this code, it replaces this variable with your actual Courier auth token. So we don't
So
even need
yeah,
to worry
so
about
this
that.
is why we're glossing it over just a little bit. It's also, if you want to like preview it quickly, you can just go ahead and grab it from here, and it'll all be auto formatted correctly. I
Exactly. It's
do
like
appreciate this
building
being
to
included because, again, even if it's just sort of your staging app, it's really good to do this process, right? If it's not something you're going to tear down immediately afterwards, it's good to do.
Exactly. Okay, great. So we do need to add the Slack access token over here. There's a sample code you can also read through to explain how to build it. I think it's easier to just look at the sample code. So it says that within profile, we want to add an object called Slack that has access token and email. So I am just going to copy this and then replace the values. In our case, I believe we can go into test events, and profile object is
Oh,
there.
nice.
Exactly. Sorry, I don't know why I keep saying exactly, but we can replace this access token with our access token. And then replace the email with my email. What email is this, by the way?
So this is going to be the email that we expect Slack to have, right? Whatever email is associated with that Slack account. So
Gotcha. Okay.
yeah.
That makes sense. So save and close. And then let's see if there's anything else that we're missing. We don't need any additional data right now.
Yeah, in this example, right, it was doing appointments, so it has these values for appointment time and stuff. Those aren't obviously required for every notification. That's just other smart data to use this template, right? Which is nice because it means that you can spend the time to like format your notification perfectly, whether that's email or Slack or what have you, and then just let your developers just supply whatever data is necessary to send a nice, rich-looking notification.
Yeah. I'm just going to skim over this because I feel like we have all of this information, and it just says once you send the curl request, you get the Slack message. If we're missing anything, we'll run into an error and we can figure that out later.
Yeah, let's grab the curl and send it.
Also, you can send the test. Let's send the test directly from here. It does the same thing. It just simulates an actual send request from Courier. So I sent it. I got a notification, but you can't see it because it's on my laptop screen. But you can see it over here. There's a little.
Hey, there's Snack App. I love you, and then it has my name. That's how I know it really cares. It did send it to a different email address, but if I was a user of this workspace, it would have come right to me. So that's what really matters. I love it. So, again, since we're thinking in this case about escalating from email or sending emails and Slacks, right? With just the email address, we're able to send this out pretty easily, right? That's pretty dope. What do we want to do for reach stuff to go a little further? Do we want to try some like API v2 functionality, or do we want to try sending this to a channel instead of a direct message? What feels fun to do next?
That's a great idea. Let's try playing around with the permissions and sending it to a channel, and then we'll convert that into API v2. Does that sound good?
Yeah.
Our next step is, let's see, Slack app requirements to send notifications via Slack, and Slack app is required. We already did that. Fantastic. Profile requirements. So this is where we can start sending direct messages.
Yeah, and yeah, the big thing is we need that scope, right?
Yes.
Direct messages requires an additional scope. Oh, this maybe is a little bit of
yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, this may be a little bit of feedback from the docs. It sort of seems like maybe we took a step back here, right? Because it first told us how to send a direct message. We now want to add the ability to send it to a channel.
Yes.
Right.
I'm wondering,
public
I
or
feel like
private
this
channel.
wasn't there last time. I don't know if it was recently.
Yeah, it seems like maybe the doc got edited around, because folks, we work on these docs all the time. But yeah, so here it tells us the scope we got to add, right? We got to be able to write public or write private for the OAuth token scope.
Exactly. Okay, so the easiest way for us to send messages to specific channels, public or private, is to open a Slack in a browser, navigate to the desired channel, and copy it from the URL. So let me see. Do we know how to open something in the browser? Is there like an easy way to do this?
I think we're gonna have to.
I could just go
to Slack in the browser. Yeah.
Yeah. Slack.com. Cut out the part where I spelled Slack entirely incorrectly. No, I want to use the browser. Use
Slack in your browser. We got it.
Let me zoom in again.
Yeah, you got it. Oh, you got it ahead of me.
I heard your voice in my head. I was like, okay, I need to zoom in.
Zoom in. And enhance.
Exactly. Okay, so we have this little token key thing at the end of it. And what do we need to do next?
We want to grab that. We want to do two things. We want to grab that and add it to our profile, right? For Slack. And then we also want to go into that Slack admin. And we want to say, hey, we want to add this scope, right? To be able to write to a public channel.
Copied the wrong thing, but yes.
Number of times I've like pasted in 100 lines of code when I was just trying to type one ID. So now our message has, well, let's add that scope. Let's go over to the Slack admin and make sure we have that scope on that.
Oh, okay, right. That was down here.
Oops.
What was the name of the scope?
Was it chat colon right dot public? I almost said dash, but I knew it was dot, folks.
Okay, so it gives us a little message that says we need to reinstall our app, so we can go ahead and reinstall our app, just like updating everything with the new permissions.
Awesome. And this is a very nice Slack thing, not to get on dirt road with this, but it's actually very nice that you can have different people able to administer your apps versus install them. So that's really nice to let your developers like play around with stuff, say like, hey, I made all the settings I need. Now will you please reinstall this app?
Exactly. And you also probably don't want it to be something that auto saves, because that could be messy.
Yeah, you don't want to go out to, like, if you have, hopefully you have multiple workspaces using your app. But yeah, so now, so
this is just in case you don't have access to a workspace.
Yeah, and this goes into doing some of the sort of interactivity that we'd want to see grow for a real production app, where it's like, hey, get a list of channels, select the channel that you want to send to. But if we do go back and look at our request object or our send object in the preview, right now we're sending this with, I think, both an email and a channel. And this was in the docs, like what it would do in that case.
Yeah, let's just test it out and see what happens. Like, does it send us both? Does it just send us one? And then we can go into docs and see how it made the decision. So it's been sent. I got the message, and this time it actually went directly into the channel.
Nice.
So yeah, could you kind of
I think if you scroll down here, it does kind of say it. Maybe
there you go.
Order of precedence. Hey, there it goes. Hey, by the way, these docs are great. Wow, this is really nice to like come to questions and then like scroll down and immediately see it. It is the best thing. But yeah, it says, hey, here's the order that we'll send it to. We'll prefer channel first, then user ID or email, right? Which and I guess technically it'll try channel, then user ID, then email, and that makes some sense, right? That if you want to blast this out, channel makes sense. User ID is more specific to Slack, and then just email, we'll try sending it to that email.
Exactly. Okay, let's see what we have next. Well, that's it, right? In our case, we tested it with a personal message from the app, and now we tested it in the channel. So next up, we're going to try to send this message with API v2.
with API v2.
Awesome.
That was a little pause.
So-
That was all we needed for editing in case API v2 proves daunting for us, but I don't think it is, because API v2 is super easy to use and a super good way to send what we call them like multi-channel notifications. I think feels like notifications with fallbacks, notifications where we want to say, hey, use this or this. But yeah, let's take a look.
Yep. And also you could have done all of this with API v1. So if you're like a past customer and you're already using it, totally fine.
Mm-hmm.
There's not really that many changes. This code that the app is providing you, the boilerplate code, is already in API v2. So you don't even need to make any changes to your code. We're just clarifying that we're not using v1. So do you want to set up like a Node.js app and see what the process is with?
Yeah, let's take a look.
That? Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and change this to Node.js and hope that my VS Code doesn't have any random project on it already. It does not. Cool. And I'm going to open a new project in my documents in my GitHub Courier. What do you want to call this project?
We'll call this project the Slack Messenger. Slacker. We'll call it Slacker. We'll call it Slacker 1994.
1994.
Who directed the movie Slacker? Did it come out in 1994? We don't know. It doesn't matter the story. We created it. We created the project.
We made this. Zoom in a little bit. And I'm going to open a new terminal. What's the process of installing Node? I'm pretty sure it's just, I might already have Node installed on my computer. If you don't.
Yeah, we do like Node-FE.
Yeah, that's it. Node--V.
Oops, maybe it's just -V. Well, folks, errors happen to everyone.
Things happen. Yep.
Hey,
right.
we got Node. So I think the big thing is we got it's even in that snippet. It's a comment at the top of that code snippet that we will have to install the Courier npm package.
Yep. And if you don't have Node, then you can just download it, install it. It's the first thing that pops up. It takes like a couple of minutes, but you'll be ready to go. Once you have Node installed, we're just going to create a new index.js file. You could build like a whole Node project. I'm just going to do this because it's quicker. And right, exactly what you just said. Install the npm package, so the SDK. So let's go ahead and be like, what is the...
Oh, it's also a code comment at the top of that code snippet that you're looking at.
Is it really?
Yeah.
Wow. I
install
love that.
With npm install at try Courier.
I love it.
Seems like someone in the documentation team loves us.
Yeah. Okay, brilliant. That took like a second. So now we have it. If you check your package.json file, you should have Courier somewhere in here.
Courier and its requirements. Yep.
Beautiful. And our next step is going to be creating a require statement so that we can load the actual module that we've just installed. If you don't want to do this step by step, if you go into the Courier docs, actually I have that open. I'll just open a new one. There is a Node.js quick start that you can use, and I will just do that as well. So we have a quick import statement, but because I don't have any, I'm not exporting a module in this case. Whoa, I have too many things happening over here. We're going to change this import statement to a require statement. We require. Nika, do you like building Node projects, or what's your preferred?
I don't usually export a module, so I will just try to write all this in one thing with everything declared as a constant. Why? I don't know, because I don't know. This is just the way I learned it when I started.
Yeah.
A lot of people, when they ask style questions, have these really specific, oh, well, I do it in exactly this style. It's like, well, isn't it a little more true that that's what your shop uses and that's what you're used to now?
Exactly.
A much bigger reason to do it a certain way.
What is a much bigger reason? Sorry.
Is that it's what your shop requires, and it's also then what you get used to doing, right? Exactly. Rather than changing style sort of at random.
So I just created an async function because we're making a post request at some point, and so JavaScript's not going to wait for our response to come back, and then nothing's going to work. With async, we can make sure that we actually wait for the response to come back. And I'm copying the paste directly from our little code snippet over here. You can also copy the code over here and like manually change it for your needs. So let's talk a little bit about what's happening in our code. Add a little word wrap so it's easier to use. Okay, so we have our async function. I'm just going to format my document a little bit. We have our auth token, so I need to make sure that that auth token is copied properly. Do you want to kind of walk us through the steps over here?
Sure, yeah. So we need our auth token, and again, this is the auth token saying, "Hey, Courier, I really have a Courier account. Let's go ahead and send to it," right? And then we're making the send. It's very much the same object that we a little used to seeing before, right? Where we're giving a to value, and in this case, you can say API v2. We can just say, "Hey, I want to send it to Slack," and here's how I want to send it to Slack. And we could add another value there. We could say, "Hey, I want to send this via email or something else," if we have that channel set up. Right now, since this workspace only has Slack set up, we're not able to send it to anything else unless we set up that stuff. Though an email would be pretty quick. If you want to demo it yourself, you can add email as a channel. Actually, wait, maybe we did set up emails, Joel. Doesn't matter to the story. And after that, we declare a template. Now, this is one of the pretty powerful things, right? Is that, again, we can let front end people or marketing people or whoever else worry about exactly how we want to template out that language. And we can just say, "Hey, this is the template ID that we want to use, and here's the data that we're supposed to provide to it."
Exactly. If you go into the documentation over here, you will see that instead of template, we have content. So this is like if you want to just create your message in line, you can use this. But if you have an actual like pretty message formatted in the designer that you just created, like we did, then you can just copy that.
It's just my own curiosity, but can you pass like HTML there, like if you're sending an email?
I've never tried that. I think that's cool.
We'll find out someday, but not on this stream because
Yeah.
we don't want anything to go wrong.
Yeah. That message that was in the settings and the notification ID is the same thing that's over here. That tells this API call that we're sending that specific message, and then any data that you have can be stored in here. Awesome. And we are calling our function. Go ahead.
It's very cool to see this like a very pretty composer for our template. Obviously, right, especially with our new API, if you do not want to be doing that and you want to be constructing your stuff, within your code and not have to go into that pretty UI, you absolutely can do that, right? You can do things like make changes to templates or what have you via the API.
Awesome. And then the next step is we're going to open up our terminal again. Where did it go? And it's just node index.js, right?
Oh, and we maybe should have console logged out like the return from that.
Oh, we definitely should have. We are getting this message over here, but
that's cool.
Let's console out our request ID. If you're using API v1, the only main difference is that you're going to have a message ID instead of a request ID. Console log request ID. I believe that should work. I think this might actually have to be within the scope of the send call. No.
And hey, folks, it is 100% accurate that I would sit there if I was doing this and be like, well, either needs to be inside or outside. Hey, let's say my catchphrase. Wouldn't it be crazy if that just worked? And hey, it did the first time.
Yeah.
Didn't need to be inside. I think if it's inside the scope, then you're awaiting that return, and so it won't have a value until you're outside of the scope.
Exactly. And I just realized that this is part of the API call itself. So it just doesn't understand what console.log is within the API request because it is just expecting JSON in here.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. We did it.
We got a request ID back and we sent it again. Yeah. Nice. So we were going to build an automation with Slack messages. So we're going to try. We'll see how it goes. This is the addenda to this to this video. Obviously, if you haven't sent a Slack message at all yet, and you haven't built a Courier automation, go ahead and go and follow this first part before you try to get into this. But this is the little bit of advanced skills.
Exactly. Our thought process behind this is basically, if you are building a Slack app and you are trying to send notifications, like, you're not just going to want to send one notification. You're going to want to either send a bunch of notifications to various people or schedule messages like on a weekly basis, for example, to say, hey, these are the announcements for this week or something. Mm-hmm. So the great thing about automations is that you can just do all of that work in one go, and then it's going to handle making sure that everything is sent out timely and to the right people.
So I think, again, because it is relatively straightforward to send a single Slack message via API, I think that the first thing we should think about is just saying, hey, in this example, we want to send to 5 people.
Yeah. Let's go into our designer again. So you build automations in the same place as you build notifications, but there's just a different tab in here. And we're going to create a template. You can use one of the common use cases. I'm just going to build one from scratch, so you can kind of see what the entire process looks like from scratch. So I'm going to call this automation, our Slacker automation. And as you can see,
can we try to get a step of Zoom here? I don't know if this is good. It may break formatting. Yeah, let's go back. Let's go back.
Go back. Okay.
Get me back to the old world. Yeah.
Okay. So we have a bunch of steps here. Most of them are pretty self-explanatory. Sending to a list of recipients. A list of recipients is basically, within Courier, you can have individual users, or you can create lists and say, hey, okay, within my entire audience, I have one list that is dedicated to, like, I don't know, students, another list that is dedicated to professionals, or, you can decide what those categories are. So if you want to send one message to a bunch of people. And then there's a bunch of other steps that honestly I haven't used that much, but based on your, personal preference or requirements, you can get into them. Delay is another one that I really like because it's pretty common, right? Like, I want to send one message and then wait for a week and then send another message. So that's what we're going to do today.
Yeah, this is very often when you end up realizing that when you want to use something like the Mailgun API directly, you realize, oh, wait, I have to stand up at least a microservice to do this, because you realize, oh, I wanted to, send a message 2 or 3 times, but I don't want to just bang, bang, bang send them, right? I want to wait a certain amount of time between each send. And so for that, you end up saying, oh, well, you have to stand up your own automation to do that. You have to set up your own microservice to do that. Automations makes this a lot simpler using our service to do that.
Yep. Couldn't have said it better myself. There are ways in which you can trigger the automation. So for example, if you have a website and it's set up with Segment, and Segment is like collecting and storing all of this data, you can say, hey, when a user does something on my website, like registers or signs up for a newsletter, then setting up with Segment will trigger this automation. That seems like too much work for this particular situation process that we're doing right now. So I'm just going to manually trigger this automation for today. Let's go ahead and send a notification. We have is it called Welcome to Courier? Is that what our notification was called? Let's check. Yeah, it was called Welcome to Courier. Let me actually rename this and say Slack 1. And we're going to go back into our automations, make sure that it is Slack 1, and you can add a recipient ID. So let's go ahead.
For anyone who's a UX nerd, that population of settings changes quickly to other messages, to other menus is so cool. That's just so nice.
It makes life
refresh the menu or anything. So easy. Okay. So in this case, I think this thing is just sending something to the user. We didn't have a delay or anything. Well, I guess you're going to show us.
Yeah, we haven't yet, but we will. That's the next step. But we do need to figure out who we're sending this message to. So this is a user that was created automatically because I was test sending to my own email address. But if you don't want to use this and you want to send it to your friend or your coworker, you can create users manually. You can import users over here. For the sake of time, I'm just going to go ahead and copy this user ID that's already been created for me. Go back into the designer, automations, and add this recipient ID so that Courier knows who this message is going to. Next step, we're going to delay it. So for this specific case, I'm just going to do 1 minute. so we don't have to wait too long. And then we're going to add another send step. We should create a new notification for this.
Yes, we don't want to create an automation called like Screaming Child where it just sends the same notification. I'm a mother, so I know how this happens, folks.
Let's duplicate our previous ones so we don't have to like repeat the process over again. But what should our second message be?
Wait, do you like me to check
Aww.
yes or no? Right. Well, that should be the reply.
That's cute. Oops. I guess since it's a Slack, we can say React. Let me see if I can add emojis in here. React this for yes, and add a cross, yes, or no.
Nice.
And I'm going to say I still love you because
I still love you. Thank you. Yeah. Yeah.
This isn't conditional love. Like we will always
unconditionally. This bot loves us unconditionally. Yeah.
Exactly.
Just need
go ahead and create the test event.
After this live stream, our bot's going to get help for codependence, folks. Don't worry.
Oh my God.
It's too needy. It's waiting a minute between messages. Not appropriate. We're gonna get it the help it needs. Don't worry.
For sure. Let's go ahead and make sure we have our access token. We have our email. We don't actually need our email this time. So, because we saw that it kind of has a precedence.
Oh, right, because it's provided as part of the automation. Nice.
But we do need a channel name. So channel, and the channel ID was somewhere over here. So I'm going to go ahead and copy that again. Whoop. Whoop.
I messed up my JSON previewer. That's how you know you're in trouble. Comma.
But I do like that it tells me when I'm messing up.
Yes. No, when I'm teaching new people now, I mean, I used to teach all these ways to do evaluations and, do linting, but then I'm like, just look for Visual Studio Code to change the color to be the wrong color. Then you're like, that's not right.
No. Okay, great. So we have everything set up. We don't really need to test this. Pretty sure it's going to work. If it doesn't, we'll go back into the data log and figure out what went wrong. So go back to this automation, send step. Gosh, what happened here? New step, send, and notification is Slack 2. Recipient is going to be the same. Still sending it to myself. Publish these changes. You can preview, create or test events. So same thing over here. Keep in mind that when we're sending, the reason that we're doing the test event thing twice is because testing your notification is different to testing your automation. This automation does not have access to the test event that we made previously.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just going to copy it.
Yeah, while that feels a little silly in our very sort of contrived demo example, when you actually do automations, right, you're going to expect that they're going to want a very different event coming in to do things like automatically do this for every new user. That's going to be very separate from the test event for a single message.
It does tell us that only data and profile properties are needed over here. So let's get rid of data, get rid of override. And there's
I think we want to lose that comma at the end of line 11. We may, depending on your JSON linter, it may or may not be happy with you having extra commas.
Awesome. I don't think I mentioned this yet, but automations is not available with API v2. So you remember how we had like a template for notification ID in API v2? Let me show you. So we were using this, right? We're not going to be able to just change this template to the automation template. We're going to have to use v1. But again, it will give us the code for it, so we don't need to worry too much.
Yeah, I think the use case that I can imagine this one for is you set the delay to a few days. And then again, that's a really good like onboarding automation where it's like, hey, now that you've been here, now that you've had an account for a few days, we want to check in about this. Hey, we want to get this additional data. This would be a really useful use for even the simple automation.
Exactly. And it gives us a curl command, so we can just go ahead and invoke this. Automation was invoked. If you click on it, it should take you. Oh, I got something. Oh, I need to pull it up quickly. Okay. So we got this, and we know it's the new version because it has my name instead.
Nice.
Now we can wait for a minute. Actually, yeah, okay.
Wait, hold on. Where's my little musical instrument? Oh, I set it over there. I can't play any hold music for a minute. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I will, however, play for you the weirdest instrument that I bought recently, which is just a very big tuning fork. It's just a very big tuning fork. So it's just C. I don't know why I bought it. Folks, I find it oddly soothing. I don't know. I just like, there's something about like, hey, I've had a difficult day.
Everything just disappears.
Here's C.
I love it.
You know, what's special about that?
It showed up.
Hey, look at that. We got our new notification.
Yeah. Can we get a little ding for the success?
Hey, ding. Wait, no, wait, hold on. I'm still learning this instrument. Wait, here we go. There we go. We got it, folks.
Beautiful. Absolutely. Okay. I'm going to say yes, I do. I like myself. I love myself. Awesome. Okay. That was some therapeutic automation sending, I love that. So pretty simple. It's works.
Funny because I hadn't built an automation, folks, before, folks, because I'm new here at Courier. And I thought it was going to take a while, but it was actually super simple. That's really nice. I'm going to have to build a couple more of those on stream.
Yeah, it's fun.
I think that's everything we wanted to show people. Well, wait, sorry, you go ahead.
Yeah. No, I was saying like using automations makes it feel a lot more real and you're not just like, you're never just going to send one message. You're always going to be sending like various when you're building a system. So yeah, go ahead.
Well, folks, I think that's most of what we wanted to cover, right? We went all the way from not having a Slack user space at all, workspace at all, to having both a Slack and a Courier workspace, to sending messages, to sending them automatically based on, and we can add things like conditionals and delays and all that other good stuff. So I think that's about time that we say adios for this one. Thank you so much for sticking with us. It was a little bit longer video, but we really wanted to show it start to finish. I am Noshnika. You can find me online at serverless_mom on Twitter. And Shreya, where do you want to be found?
I want to be found over here at Shrey the Cray on Twitter, Instagram, and any other platform. I try to secure that username everywhere.
I love it. I love it. Folks, that is the rest. You can find us on, of course, the company on Twitter at Try Courier or at courier.com. Thank you so much, and we'll see you soon.
Bye.
I'm going to hit end broadcast.
Yeah.